All right, hello and welcome to Great Things with Great Tech, episode 2. My name is Anthony Spiteri, and this podcast is all about highlighting companies doing great things with great tech. And this episode, we're talking to Ben Young from vBridge. Welcome, Ben.
Hello, how are you going? Thank you very much for having me.
No worries, mate. So you and I know each other pretty well, but did you just want to quickly introduce yourself and what your role at vBridge is?
Yeah, so I'm Ben Young. I'm from Christchurch, New Zealand, and I'm our in-house developer for our infrastructure as a service and related sort of services.
Excellent, good stuff. So vBridge, it's an interesting company, and I think kind of one that flies under the radar for me in the infrastructure space and the hosting space in ANZ, but a really great example of, I think, leveraging great technology to do great things, and that's why I wanted to have you guys and you on personally in episode 2. But yeah, let's dig into the history a little bit, because I think it's got a little bit of an interesting history in terms of where you guys came from. Like every sort of great company, there's a great story behind it. And I think it's also about the relationships that form the companies. And you guys are a service provider, like you said, based out of Christchurch. And that's a relevant sort of topic in this whole company history, because Christchurch in itself over the last 10 years has seen some challenges, which I think has helped you guys grow as a company. You're 10 years old, which, 10 years old seems to be the average age at the moment for these service providers, I'm finding. It's just a sweet spot of time in terms of offering these services. And really, I guess, kind of small in terms of employees, only 12 employees, right? When you guys started, how many employees were you guys?
So John and Hamish formed the company in 2010, sort of throughout 2010. And so it was just those two, and then their actual respective wives also work in the business and still work in the business to date. Yep, very much a family affair. So it was just the two of them. They went off on their own, having worked together for a number of years in a few different companies, and formed this cloud computing bubble that was starting to sort of erupt
and it was called
globally.
vBridge. Was it called vBridge at the start?
Yep, always called vBridge. In fact, it's the same. Even we haven't even rebranded or anything since day one, so nothing's changed.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but from what the research I did, Hamish and John, and they work for an agricultural company, which I think, looking at the website today, still must have some sort of impact on the company, because the front page is all about some sort of harvesting and whatnot. So just talk a little bit about that agricultural company. And I think, were you there at that company as well?
I was, yeah. So I met John and Hamish both at Ravensdown, was the agricultural firm. In fact, they had it for a small period of time. They actually had a presence in Australia and even in WA itself. So, but yeah, big player in the agricultural market here in New Zealand. So they were in the IT team, and so was I. Obviously different roles, but I met them there, and so the rest is history.
Okay, interesting. So you guys started the company Christchurch. Now, Christchurch is famous for a lot of things in the world, but I think what it's most famous for is the fact that it's one of the sort of most active earthquake-prone cities in the world. And obviously over the last, I don't know how many years, you guys have had some pretty significant shakes. Isn't that right? Yeah,
so call it good timing, I suppose, in a way. So when in 2010 was the sort of start of that sequence, and I mean, New Zealand's full of fault lines, just geography-wise, we're not that big. We sit on lots of plates. So, but Christchurch itself, up until the earthquakes actually happened, the geologists didn't really know that there was a lot of faults underneath Christchurch until it happened, and they were sort of discovered when it pretty much picked up our city and then dumped it back down on the ground.
Yeah, I actually remember. I remember like the ocean kind of raised up. There's pictures of the oceans raising up like 2 or 3 meters and just jutting out and exposing the seabed. Some crazy stuff happened around that area.
Yeah, that was actually up north. That was only a couple of years ago. So it's sort of all related. Well, they keep saying it's related, but that was up in Kaikoura, which is sort of the top of the South Island. But yeah, the seabed raised up 3 or 4 meters, and you can now walk out to sea/land now, and all the rocks that were underground have now got moss and mold and all sorts of good stuff growing on them.
So in terms of, the company from a technology point of view and offering infrastructure as a service, I guess when that happens, I mean, you see a lot of destruction, a lot of on-premises locations are probably at that point seem to be not fit for business from a business continuity point of view. And, I think it's it's real no surprise that a country like New Zealand has huge uptake for infrastructure as a service, and it seemed to be one of the leaders, directional leaders in the world with regards to technology uptake. And I think it was no different for infrastructure as a service. So, I think John and Hamish saw an uptake rapidly through the business of infrastructure as a service after these initial events. Do you want to sort of take us through, because you were there, I mean, how quickly did it grow after those initial sort of earthquake events?
Yeah, so they started it in, like I said, late 2010, and we had a small earthquake, which really just sort of knocked over people's chimneys and things.
Yeah.
Didn't really cause a lot of localized damage. Businesses were still able to be worked in, and everyone was just like, wow, that was weird. Fast forward a little bit to February 2011, and that's when 1:30 in the afternoon came around, and yeah, within a matter of seconds, it literally rendered the CBD out of business. So every single tenancy was pretty much unsafe. We didn't have power and water at our house for a week, which led into pretty much a rapid uptake in Iaas, because you take all these businesses that had either on-premise equipment or may have had a little bit of co-location. Thankfully, all of the data centers in Christchurch remained operational 100% of the time, which meant vBridge as a platform was up. But yeah, anyone that had any on-premise anything was kind of like, wow, what do I do? I mean, I don't have any office space. I can't get it in to get my computer or my backups. So for those that were smart enough and did have off-premise copies or were able to grab some on the way out the door, then they pretty much, John and Hamish were running around like crazy trying to find old tape libraries to suit older customers, tapes to try and onboard them onto the platform.
There's still a lot of tape back then, I suppose, right? Yeah, so a lot of tape backups.
Yeah, and there's a few like P2Vs, like literally people rocking up to the office with like a server and going, "Can you help me?" It's like, So
that's crazy.
So yeah, it was a crazy time, not only for the IT industry, but just for everything in general. I mean, our city's looking pretty good now. It's only just coming back, and we ourselves only moved back into the CBD about a year ago. So so it's not like it was all rainbows and unicorns 2 years later. It's been a long process.
So even sort of after that, I mean, so did you guys have presence in Christchurch and another location, or was it just Christchurch, or did you always have, because I've read through history, you've got other location in Auckland, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So it started up in Christchurch, and then we started up another hosting node in Auckland, and it's all managed by the same platform up the country. So started off as sort of a replica target with some Veeam Cloud Connect services, and now it's more of a hosting location, as well as we bring on more North Island based customers or customers that want to be based out of there.
Yeah, we'll dig into that a little bit later on, because that intrigues me in terms of how you guys have grown that and how it's changed and evolved, right? And I guess one of the biggest things that you probably did was go from, and this happens to a lot of infrastructure service companies, and you reach a certain inflection point where you have to realize that how are we going to continue to grow and scale while keeping costs down? And, to only have 12 or 13 people in the company, you're going to do something dramatic to ensure that growth can happen while you're still remaining profitable, right? And automation and a way for your customers to onboard quickly is definitely the way to go. So I think from what I've read, in 2013, you guys launched, it might have been then, My Cloud Space, which is your portal. So you developed that, Ben. Basically, from what I understand, you are My Cloud Space. You've basically written that from the ground up.
Yeah, that's right. So 2013, I joined the company. So I wasn't there from 2010-ish through to 2013. But yeah, in February 2013, John and Hamish realised that they weren't going to be able to scale. They were still doing a lot of billing and other tasks sort of manually.
Manual tasks, right?
Yeah, especially like billing would take, a few days each month, even when it was smaller, pro-ratering things at a daily basis. So they pretty much reached out to me, and my development background and systems integration was brought on, and we started this journey of My Cloud Space, and it's still just me who works on it. All the rest of the team are sort of systems engineers and salespeople and CEOs and things. We built it from the ground up, the way that we've wanted it, the way that we want our customers to consume it in an easy way, without complicating them with too many options. It's a great little platform.
Yeah, so this is your platform that builds on the underlying foundational platforms that the vendors offer, right? One of the interesting things about you guys that I've noticed is that you're really, I mean, a lot of infrastructure as a service companies, you can be one of two types. You can be that public cloud model, which has a credit card swipe and you get what you get, or you can consume it through resellers and the channel. And you guys are very, very heavy on the reseller side, aren't you? And I think from what I've seen of my cloud space, it's hugely, hugely driven towards reseller first. Do you want to just explain a little bit about that from an architectural point of view, about how you actually developed this platform? Because I think a lot of these cloud management platforms are developed from a tenant perspective first, but you guys have gone and I think developed it from a reseller perspective.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, when I joined, so when we first started out with the first variant of this, the first challenge that we needed to solve was billing and how we go about billing and quoting, because we've all been to public cloud providers and you've typed in all the numbers into the calculators and it gives you 300 different boxes.
Yeah.
So one thing we wanted to solve was not only efficiency within the business so that billing is automatic at the end of the month and it just sends it off into Xero and creates all the invoices nicely. But the other was to actually let the resellers also be able to use this portal in their own sales engagements out in the market to log on. There's a tiered pricing model, so they can go on and create quotes. And so that was sort of the first variant of my cloud space was kind of like a quoting portal, quoting and billing. So if changes were made on the platform, someone here would still extend the disk or
so at that point at that point it didn't have any tie-ins to the API or anything to the actual infrastructure platform. It was really there for reseller management, billing, reporting.
Yep, that's exactly right. And then obviously the natural progression after that is started integrating it with things like VMware and then any of the other services that have come later. So and a little bit on the way that we work in the market. So we have a reset. The way, I guess the reason that we are still small is because the way that we engage with the market. So if a company is large enough to have an IT organization within themselves, or they're already dealing with another integrator in the market, that's fine. We'll kind of sell them infrastructure as a service directly. However, kind of if you need that helping hand to install Windows and manage all the things that you would be part of a sort of IT team's job, then we direct them through one of our resellers, and it just depends where they are and kind of how big they are as to what reseller sort of it would go to, and then obviously resellers bring in.
So you have added an element of self-service and multi-tenancy as that's evolved. Let's dig into that, because I think obviously the history of the company is one that's developed interestingly from a small company out of a real need. The earthquakes, the issues of on-premises reliability that drove growth locally for you guys. But then you reach a point where you realize that what you were doing wasn't going to scale, brought you along. You obviously did some great development work, which is tied into the back-end platform. That Xero, was that the billing platform that you guys run, or what's Xero?
Yep. So Xero is the sort of online accounting. I think it's global now. It's sort of in America and the UK, but at the time it was a New Zealand founded online accounting package. So it suited us. They had APIs and they were kind of young and hot and startup mode like us. It works well. So that was kind of the accounting / ERP platform that we utilize and still do to this day. So that's kind of what handled that's what delivered the invoices and managed the accounts. But obviously my cloud space was the platform that was kind of creating those invoices in Xero.
Yeah, okay. So just on that, so in terms of the innovation and services, so just chat a little bit about how the platform is, what's it running? I mean, obviously we know it's VMware, but what exactly is it running in terms of those services, the vendor technologies that you've got, and how have you done core innovation around that technology?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I guess from a raw infrastructure perspective, we're all running Juniper switching primarily. We've got pure storage arrays. We've got some HP 3PARs. We've got a mixture of Synergy and newer Dell sort of blade infrastructure. And then vendor-wise, we sort of use Veeam heavily, obviously, as you know. We've got some Dell Isilons. We've got Cloudian now for Object.
Okay.
We use Fortinet for all of our firewall clusters and security products. yeah, that's kind of the stack. And then sitting on top of that, I suppose we've got VMware, which we utilize heavily, multi-site, no VCD, so all
Okay, interesting.
VMware.
We'll
Yeah, we
get
sort of
into that a little
started
bit
out.
later on. Yeah, I think
Yep,
we'll dig into that.
yep.
I'm very
So,
interested.
yep.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and all the Veeam suites sitting on top. So Cloud Connect, obviously BNR, and now Office 365. So yeah, we use a number of tools.
That's big. Yeah, that's a broad stack, and and my cloud space is basically plugged into all of that, even the networking and whatnot. Or
yeah, networking to a certain degree. Even more so probably over the next sort of 12 months as we refresh the platform and change, fundamentally how we deliver that. A lot of our clients are privately delivered, so with sort of service provider handovers that we have in the data center. So sort of like layer 2 or routed instances into us. Provisioning wise, we do self-provision. We handle the provisioning within my cloud space, so it goes and creates all of the sort of tenancy within the VMware and Veeam and other bits and pieces. But networking still is semi-manual within us. It just depends on how the customer wants to hand over with us. With that being said, that's not the case if they spin up their own firewall and then just do a site-to-site VPN or similar. They can connect into their own tenancy that way automatically.
Yeah, right. So the VMware as a platform, right? It's obviously very popular and something that's going to be a recurring theme, I think, initially for a lot of the interviews I'm going to be doing on this podcast. I think a lot of them are going to be service providers that leverage VMware as that underlying infrastructure stack. But it's interesting that you guys decided to not use vCloud Director, because vCloud Director itself is popular for an infrastructure as a service player because it does give that ready-made tenancy, multi-tenant infrastructure, but also gives that access from a UI perspective as well. So the control and feel to the tenants, to the resellers, to be able to have that little bit more extra feel. But what was the technical decision or maybe it wasn't technical, it might have even been something else, but what was the decision to not go with vCloud Director at the time and basically recreate that within my cloud space?
Yeah, so we actually did start with VCD. We went, cool, we're a service provider, we should do what everyone else is doing and install vCloud Director, and we'll manage the migration across from what at the time. So John and Hamish didn't put in VCD to start the business; it was just running on VMware. So, we were going to have to migrate it. Yep. And then we thought, well, I actually started. I remember I got to a certain point within the development, so I was actually got it to the point where you could provision VMs and pop console and do all sorts of other bits. And then we realized that the only bit that we actually really, really, really wanted out of vCloud Director was the Proxy console,
which is very interesting in itself.
So it was just so disruptive. It was going to be, we were going to have to make things a certain way or sell products this way or that way, and it was going to be hard to integrate other products and services that we may want to bring on.
Right. So you felt that at that point it was narrowing your potential scope of innovation effectively and what you were able to deliver.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty widely known even at the time. There was always a VCD. You always had to wait to upgrade your internal systems until VCD was ready.
Yeah.
And then, like I say, narrowing down what else it can integrate with. And then there was also a time later that they were getting rid of VCD UI, and then it came back, and then it was going to be an API only thing. And
dark days. Yeah.
They were.
Interesting that you mentioned the console proxy, right? Because I think it's funny how through the years, and even in the early days of infrastructure as a service, I know when I was doing it, having that proxy console was so important to give the customer or the tenant that actual visual to the screen, to actually get to them. That was like the key. And I remember looking at a bunch of, cloud management platforms at the time. And if they didn't have a console proxy or a way to deliver the console, I struck them off the list. So it's funny, and I know a lot of other people that did that. So it's funny how that console proxy is quite a continuing theme with regards to what people want out of that cloud management platform for infrastructure as a service. And it's even interesting if you look at the public clouds today. I mean, they all have ways to get to the console. Even like I think about AWS, they've enhanced the way that you SSH straight away. They now have direct connectivity through the AWS console, which makes it easier to get a screen. do you see that as being a warm and fuzzy, or is it an actual tech requirement? Because at some point you're not going to be able to trust the actual boot, or you're not going to trust the machine itself. Why do you think the console has become such a cornerstone of infrastructure as a service?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's definitely not a warm and fuzzy. I mean, if it's broken or for whatever reason, like it broke with the last vSphere upgrade, people, we know about it. So it's definitely not a warm and fuzzy. People use it all the time. I mean, you've got people bringing up servers, automatically in their environment that maybe they don't run DHCP in. It's not automatically on the network. So being able to actually get to that, that actual console of the machine and IP it, or if it crashes and RDS won't let you in, and without having to sort of completely restart the machine or you just get locked out. It's definitely a key function of my cloud space. And yeah, it was, like I say, it was one of the founding reasons we were going to use VCD was that console proxy.
Right, good stuff. So just a little bit more on my cloud space and the fact that I think from what I'm hearing, that's like central to your core innovation and what is actually a differentiator for you guys. And I was just actually thinking that in effect, you're kind of offering a great thing, the great tech, which is my cloud space, to your resellers. So there's almost like an extra level here of greatness, if you will, because what you've developed enables your resellers to do great things with your stack, which does great things with the vendor stack, which I think is interesting in itself. And you could probably talk about that a little bit later on. But what would you say is the core innovation within my cloud space that makes it different and makes it successful?
I think that just the general lack of reliance on other companies, really. We integrate directly. We write our all own SDKs to integrate with all of the different vendor stacks, the Veeam and VMware and Isolons and Fortinets. So not having to rely on someone else to patch something so that we can then upgrade that, there's a sort of a chain that can occur. And being in control of our own destiny. We decide that we want to integrate Cloudian, great, let's do it. And we don't, we make our own rules. We don't have any sort of a box around us saying, well, you got to, whatever you do, it has to fit within these four walls. So we can sort of pivot and change as we need to.
Yeah, and I think from knowing a little bit about what you guys are doing as well, I think it actually allows you to be a little bit more flexible in what you can offer. Like I've seen these calculators that you guys have come up with for, say, the Office 365 product, which I hadn't seen before. So very intuitive ways, because you've got that flexibility to offer different ways to attack a problem which potentially is solved generically outside the market, and if you're doing a cookie cutter solution. But because you guys have got some creative control in terms of that platform, you can do things a little bit different to tailor it to your actual resellers based on their actual wants and requirements, and I'm guessing their feedback as well.
Yeah, definitely. So when we productize anything, we like to, I guess, simplify it so that the customer experience is, is fantastic. They come on, they want to, like Office 365 is a fantastic example. Obviously, the product itself has an endless amount of configuration, but ultimately most people want to back up their OneDrive, their SharePoint, and their Exchange, and they want it for 10 years. Let's go. Let's not give them the 400 other options. Do you want to include this or exclude this? And, set this setting. Sure, we'll let you do that once you get provision, but being able to quote it, how much data do I have and how many users do I have? Click go, there's your tenancy. Then you can go and mess about with all the other settings if you want. So us being able to sort of, like you say, simplify that UI for the customer and sort of make some decisions up front around how probably 99% of people may consume this. And sure, we can do all the other things that we need to in the back end, or surface it through the UI later down the road. But that's kind of why we do things like that, and we take that approach with anything, be it Iaas or backups or enterprise NAS storage.
There you go. So moving through, how did you feel like you guys disrupted the market initially, and how are you disrupting the market now from an external point of view?
Yeah, so like we've always been, historically a smaller player in the market. There's the big party over here sort of ate up all of the other medium-sized cloud providers.
Yep.
So we had to do things slightly differently. We did a couple of things from an infrastructure perspective. Back when sort of solid state was horrendously expensive and relatively unattainable for most people, we we went out on a limb and said, okay, all of our tier 1 storage is going to be solid state. And that was really well received by the market. It like notable performance boost for our existing customers, but also a fantastic story throughout the market when we bought that online, and obviously the other vendors sort of soon followed. And then our My Cloud Space portal, no one even to this day has anything close to that, and being able to deliver the amount of things that My Cloud Space does within one portal. One thing that I always try and hold on to is I don't want customers to log onto 3 different systems to interface with us. I want you to log on once with those credentials and have everything that you need at your fingertips. I hate it personally when I've got to log on to 2 different things or 3 different things to try and do what I'm doing every day. Having that all integrated in one portal. My Cloud Space definitely disrupted the market, and it still is. All of our competitors want it. They're trying to achieve that in various different ways.
That's funny because when I first saw it, I thought that, certain portals out there without naming names were good, and I've seen a lot of them out there. But when you first took me through My Cloud Space, I was blown away. And it takes a lot to blow me away in that space, because I thought I'd seen it all and I'd seen the best of the best. But certainly for those that are looking at a great example of how to actually go a step ahead with the portal, I think My Cloud Space is definitely it. So just interestingly, have you had any, because I think from the industry, knowing the industry, getting a portal is difficult because you need smart people like yourself. This is your thing, right? And I know that this is something that you maintain, you improve, but not everyone can be a Ben Young, right? So have you guys actually had approaches to license or sell the portal to other providers?
Even local competitors here, and maybe not from the international, it's hard to sort of get word out there internationally, but certainly locally we've had queries about being able to utilize it or sell it as a software product. It's kind of a really, really nice competitive advantage that we have at the moment is this portal. So that's certainly locally in New Zealand. It's not to say that things couldn't be done outside of New Zealand. We've obviously showed it to VMware and Veeam like yourselves. We've demoed it actually on premise and at VMware HQ, and people like Alan Renouf and stuff, because we were driving his APIs, and I think at the time a lot of people weren't driving them as hard as we were. Much like yourselves, they were super stoked to see people actually using the APIs, instead of wrapping it all in BCD. So
I think as a tech theme, that's an interesting one that you talked about, is how much, there must be some sort of desire to make money and license a portal like that, but then once you do that, you then lose a bit of your competitive edge. That's the biggest sort of way up that I think a company like yourselves needs to actually come to. And there are examples I can think of other companies that have actually, developed a great portal and then licensed it out, and they've pivoted to that being their core business. But obviously there's still a desire to work through resellers to offer core infrastructure as a service, backup as a service. So for you guys, if you guys were to license it out, then you do lose your competitive edge in the market, which is interesting. But how do you then look to continually internally disrupt yourself to continue your own innovation from now on? Internal disruption is just as important as external disruption. So how are you guys looking to continually sort of disrupt yourself on the inside?
So we're always trying to bring on new products and services, be it another vendor or an additional offering from an existing vendor. We're always challenging, is the current, even from an infrastructure as a service standpoint, should we go all SSD at some point? Just don't offer any spinning disk. We were, another great example of that is a couple of years ago, we decided to, and I don't know how many other people around the globe are doing this, but with our our Cloud Connect backup servers, they're all 100% solid state now, just because we wanted the performance of people's backups to not only be fast, but if we needed to restore that in a hurry across to our Iaas platform, it would come across fast, and customers' backup jobs would finish faster. So we're always looking at ways to try and improve what we've got, but also create new products and services, and enhance My Cloud Space and the rest of our offerings.
Okay. Now, just moving into the partnership. So you mentioned, VMware, Veeam, Juniper, Dell, 3PAR, I think. Who else have I missed? Because you had quite a few there. So what makes a great technology partner for you guys?
Definitely people that are approachable, people we can talk to. It's no use us just logging a job. We tend to, especially because we tend to be automating a lot, we tend to run into the weird problems that kind of not many people face. Therefore, you talk to someone in level 1 or level 2 or level 3 support, and it often ends up at R&D because that's just where it ends up. So definitely having a partner that we can pick up the phone with, talk on Teams, Zoom, whatever it be, and actually have a conversation, that's key. Then second to that, from my perspective anyway, would be a company that is, or a vendor that's API, ideally API first.
Oh, you said it, API first. That old chestnut, eh?
Yeah.
What is actually?
Yeah.
Let's dig into that just before you move on. What does that mean to you, API first? Because you are a consumer of APIs like no other, right? So what does that mean to you, being API first?
I guess thinking about the product, like, don't make the API last, or don't just add it because someone said they wanted an API to like extend a disk or something. Like, actually build your product around, like, utilize your own API. Much like even the later versions of Veeam are actually deriving their own APIs, but B&R traditionally isn't. So there's a massive feature gap between what you can do natively or in PowerShell versus what we can do through the APIs. So really have an API centric approach to building out applications and actually consume your own APIs, and then that way it's good for everyone.
Yeah, so maybe API centric is the more better term than API first, yeah. I think, as well. So I actually like that, API centric, because I always kind of wonder what it actually means. API first, it's a chicken or the egg thing. Like, what are you doing? I mean, I think one of the platforms that I can think that was API first was something like Nicira, which became NSX, right? There wasn't a UI or interface on that for ages until really VMware bought them and acquired them, and needed to actually bring it up to sort of more a level where their existing customer base would consume it. But that to me was certainly an API first system, or an API centric system, because literally to do anything you needed to go APIs initially.
Yeah.
Now that was interesting. I just thought I'd double tap into that because we hear that API first approach a lot, but I just wanted to get a practitioner of API's view on it.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's more of a development term, I suppose, like if you were building out a new system. But certainly when we select vendors, a big part of that is, do you have an API? Because if you don't, you're probably not going to sell us anything.
Well, you can't, you can't do anything of what you guys are offering, and what your value add is through my cloud space. You can't do it if it didn't have an API. So that's definitely going to be across out. So that's what makes a great tech partner for you. But also, I think I heard relationship as well probably is important from a tech partner point of view. So it's not all about the technology, but it's also about the partnership. It's a two-way street there. So that's very cool. Ben, glad we're going to start to wrap up now, but it's, I think vBridge is an example of someone who has a company doing great things with the great tech, but not doing it the same as others, going out their own way, looking at different ways to solve the problems, be it through the SSD approach that you talked about, which is always going to, be a little bit of a gamble either way, but then having a different approach to even the portal and not leverage something like vCloud Director. And I think clearly it's been successful for you guys, 10-year-old company going strong, winning all sorts of awards as well out there, Partner of the Years and for Veeam, and I'm not sure what else you guys have won. I'm sure quite a few. But what does the future hold for vBridge now? Just quickly, where do you see yourselves in sort of, I'll say 2 to 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can't we can't skirt around the edges of the hyperscalers out there. So I wouldn't mind betting we find ourselves. I mean, that's the beauty of having something like my cloud space. We can integrate with anyone we want. So probably I'll look to dabble in that space, deliver some PaaS services or things that maybe aren't practical to host here, or just, let them do it at their scale. Yeah. Especially with Azure coming on shore within 2-3 years here.
Yeah, it's exciting.
They announced that. Yeah, so that could be cool. And then, just that next growth phase about taking the business to the next level. Probably start tapping into the North Island a bit more. At the moment, we're primarily
There's
South Island.
There's only a
focused,
volcano. There's a volcano on the North Island, isn't there?
Yeah.
Earthquakes, volcano. It's New Zealand's kind of famous for that sort of stuff, but it's what makes it so beautiful as well. All right, no worries.
Exactly.
So thanks, Ben. I think it's been great. Ben, do you just want to tell the listeners in terms of where they can find you on the social media? And
so I'm at Ben. So I'm benyoung.blog and at benyoungnz on Twitter. And then if you want to see more about vBridge, we're vbridge.co.nz. And there's some, if you YouTube my cloud space, you'll also get some reference videos there too, some sort of demo and sort of feature videos that are on there if you're interested.
Brilliant. All right. Well, thanks, Ben. Thanks, guys, for listening. This has been episode 2 of Great Things with Great Tech. Just as a reminder, we'll post the show notes on the website. We're on YouTube, so please subscribe there. We've moved into more podcast platforms as well. So we're now on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts and whatnot. So subscribe because we have got a great lineup of companies such as vBridge to come. So with that, thanks, Ben, and thanks, everybody.